The red sun of Kepler 442c cast long shadows across the rocky landscape as Dr. Lisa Martinez adjusted her field equipment. She had been studying alien life forms for 15 years, but this planet held creatures unlike anything she had ever seen. The shadow hunters were massive beasts, nearly twice the size of Earth's largest bears, with razor-sharp claws and teeth that could crush metal. They ruled this world as the ultimate predators. Lisa wiped sweat from her forehead and looked back at her small research station. Her team was small but skilled. Jake Thompson, a marine biologist from California, was busy analyzing water samples from the nearby lake. Amy Collins, their field researcher, was setting up motion sensors around the camp perimeter. They had been on this planet for 3 months, and every day brought new discoveries about how these creatures lived and hunted. The shadow hunters were intelligent. That much was clear from watching them coordinate hunts and solve problems. They used tools, communicated with complex sounds, and even seemed to have a social structure. But what puzzled Lisa most was how they behaved around humans. Every other species on this planet fled in terror when a shadow hunter appeared. The rabbit-like creatures called hoppers would scatter immediately. The bird-like gliders would take to the air in panic. Even the armored crawlers, which were nearly as large as the shadow hunters themselves, would retreat when confronted. It was normal predator-prey behavior, exactly what Lisa expected to find. But humans were different. The shadow hunters would approach the research team's camp, stop at a distance, and simply watch. They would focus on the humans' faces, particularly their eyes, for long periods. Then instead of attacking, they would make a low rumbling sound and walk away. It happened so often that Lisa had started keeping detailed records. "Dr. Martinez," Amy called from across the camp. "You need to see this footage from last night." Lisa walked over to Amy's workstation where multiple screens showed recordings from their security cameras. Amy pointed to one screen showing the main path leading to their camp. "Watch this," Amy said, pressing play. On the screen, a large shadow hunter emerged from the forest around midnight. It moved with the fluid grace of a natural killer, its dark fur barely visible against the shadows. But instead of stalking the camp like a predator approaching prey, it walked directly into the open area in front of their main building. The creature sat down, much like a dog might, and stared directly at the camera. Its yellow eyes seemed to glow in the infrared recording. For nearly 20 minutes it remained perfectly still, just watching. Then it stood up, made that same low rumbling sound Lisa had heard before, and disappeared back into the forest. "This is the 4th time this week," Amy said. "Different individuals each time. They're not hunting us. They're studying us." Jake walked over, drying his hands on a towel. "Maybe they're just curious about new arrivals on their territory." "No," Lisa said, shaking her head. "I've seen how they react to other new species. Remember when that ship crashed on the other side of the continent? The rescue team found shadow hunter tracks all around the alien survivors, but the aliens were all dead, killed and eaten. But us? They just watch." Lisa had been thinking about this puzzle for weeks. She pulled up her research files on her tablet and showed them several video clips she had collected. "Look at this pattern," she said. "In every encounter, the shadow hunters focus on our faces, specifically our eyes. They get close enough to see our eyes clearly. They stare for a while, and then they leave. It's like they're looking for something specific." Amy leaned forward to get a better look at the footage. "What could they be looking for?" "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "But I think we need to test this theory. We need a controlled encounter." Jake looked alarmed. "You want to deliberately approach one of those things? Lisa, they could kill any of us in seconds." "Not approach," Lisa said. "Wait for one to approach us. But this time, instead of staying inside the buildings, one of us needs to make direct eye contact. We need to see what happens when they get a really good look at human eyes." The opportunity came sooner than expected. 2 days later, Amy was collecting plant samples near the lake when a young shadow hunter emerged from the tree line. It was smaller than the adults they usually saw, probably not fully grown, but still dangerous. Amy froze, her heart pounding. The creature was only 30 feet away, close enough that she could see the individual hairs in its dark fur and the sharp points of its claws. She remembered Lisa's theory and forced herself to stand still instead of running. The young shadow hunter approached slowly, its head tilted slightly to one side. Amy could see its yellow eyes fixed on her face. When it was close enough that she could smell its musky scent, it stopped and sat down, just as the adults had done on the security footage. Amy stared back into its eyes, trying to control her fear. The creature's pupils were large and intelligent. There was something almost familiar about the way it looked at her, like it was trying to remember something important. For several minutes, they remained locked in this strange staring contest. Amy noticed that the creature's breathing had changed from the quick, excited panting of a hunter to something slower and calmer. The tension in its muscles seemed to fade. Then something extraordinary happened. The young shadow hunter made a sound Amy had never heard before. It was soft, almost gentle, like a whimper, not the aggressive growl of a predator, but something that sounded almost like submission. The creature backed away slowly, never breaking eye contact until it was several yards away. Then it turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Amy, standing alone by the lake, shaking with adrenaline and amazement. When Amy returned to camp and told Lisa and Jake what had happened, Lisa knew they had discovered something important. The shadow hunters weren't just curious about humans. They were recognizing something in human eyes, something that triggered a response buried deep in their instincts. That night, Lisa sat outside the research station, looking up at the alien stars and wondering what secret was hidden in the simple act of human eye contact. She had the feeling that this discovery would change everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe. 3 weeks after Amy's encounter with the young shadow hunter, Lisa's research report reached Earth's Colonial Science Division. Within days, her secure communication system was flooded with messages from scientists, military officers, and colonists across human space. Everyone wanted to know more about the strange behavior she had discovered. Lisa sat in her small office, scrolling through dozens of reports that had arrived overnight. Her hands trembled as she read each one. The pattern was everywhere. Commander Nick Rodriguez of the exploration vessel UES Frontier had sent a detailed report from the water world of Oceanus Prime. His team had encountered massive sea creatures, called depth stalkers, predators the size of ancient earth whales with intelligence to match. The creatures had surrounded the human diving team, but instead of attacking, they had positioned themselves to stare directly at the divers' faces through their helmet visors. The creatures maintained eye contact for over an hour, Rodriguez had written. When we finally surfaced, they followed us to the edge of the reef and watched until we were back on the ship. Our marine biologist said she had never seen predatory behavior like this. It was like they were trying to remember something. Another message came from the mining colony on Titan's Edge, a rocky planet where silicon-based creatures hunted in packs across the desert landscape. Colony Administrator Jenny Walsh described how the crystal wolves, as the miners called them, would approach the colony fence and sit in groups, all facing the human settlement. They would remain there for hours, their multifaceted eyes reflecting the harsh sunlight as they watched the humans work. At first we thought they were planning an attack, Walsh had written, but they never tried to break through the fence. They just watched. When one of our miners accidentally left the gate open, last month, 3 crystal wolves entered the compound. Instead of hunting, they approached the nearest miner and stared at him until he stared back. Then they left peacefully. The reports kept coming. Gas giant mining platforms reported aerial predators that would hover near human observation windows. Underground colonies described burrowing hunters that would tunnel close to human living areas and then stop, as if waiting for something. Even the research stations studying primitive life forms on newly discovered worlds found the same pattern. Lisa printed out all the reports and spread them across her desk. Jake and Amy gathered around to help her analyze the data. "Look at this," Amy said, pointing to a report from New Colorado. "The timber stalkers there focus on humans who work outdoors, but they show the strongest response to the security guards and the former soldiers in the colony." Jake picked up another report. "Same thing here on Frost Valley. The ice bears seek out the rescue team members and the emergency responders, the people who have faced dangerous situations. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She pulled up the personnel files for her own team and cross-referenced them with their encounters with the shadow hunters. The pattern was clear. Amy had been a wilderness survival instructor before joining the research team. She had survived a mountain climbing accident that killed 2 of her companions. Jake had served as a Coast Guard rescue swimmer, saving dozens of people from drowning. Lisa herself had lived through a transport crash on Mars that had left her stranded in the desert for 6 days. "It's not just that we're human," Lisa said slowly. "It's that we've survived things that should have killed us. We've faced death and lived." That evening, Lisa sent a priority message to Dr. Pete Barnes, an evolutionary psychologist at the University of Earth. If anyone could help explain this phenomenon, it would be Pete. He had spent his career studying how trauma and survival experiences changed human behavior and brain chemistry. Pete's response came within hours. He was fascinated by the reports and requested permission to join the research. Within 2 weeks, he had arrived on Kepler 442c with a team of specialists and advanced scanning equipment. "I have a theory," Pete told Lisa as they walked through the forest near the research station. "Survival experiences change us at a fundamental level. They alter our brain chemistry, our posture, even the way our eyes move and focus. What if these predators are recognizing something in us that marks us as survivors?" They didn't have to wait long to test the theory. A large male shadow hunter emerged from the undergrowth ahead of them. Pete immediately activated his portable scanner, pointing it at both the creature and at Lisa. The shadow hunter approached them with the same careful, deliberate movements they had observed before. It sat down 10 feet away and began its familiar staring routine, focusing intently on their faces. Pete's scanner worked silently, measuring brain activity, hormone levels, and dozens of other biological markers. After 20 minutes, the shadow hunter made its low rumbling sound and departed. "Incredible," Pete said, looking at his readings. "When that creature made eye contact with you, your brain showed patterns I've only seen in combat veterans and disaster survivors. But here's the strange part. The creature's brain activity changed too. It went from hunting mode to something completely different, almost like recognition." Over the following days, Pete tested his equipment on all the team members during their encounters with the shadow hunters. The results were consistent. Humans who had survived traumatic experiences triggered the strongest responses from the predators. Their brain patterns, hormone signatures, and even the subtle movements of their eyes seemed to communicate something to the creatures at an instinctive level. "It's like a universal language," Pete explained to Lisa one evening as they reviewed the data. "These predators aren't just recognizing us as humans, they're recognizing us as apex survivors. Something in our eyes tells them that we've looked death in the face and refused to surrender." Lisa stared out at the alien landscape, watching the twin moons rise over the forest. Somewhere in those shadows, shadow hunters were moving through their territory, hunting and surviving as they had for millions of years. But when they encountered humans, something ancient in their genetic memory responded to what they saw. "Pete," she said quietly, "what if this isn't just about survival experience? What if there's something deeper, something that connects us to these creatures across impossible distances and evolutionary gaps?" Pete nodded thoughtfully. "I've been wondering the same thing. The response is too consistent, too universal. It's like these predators have been programmed to recognize something specific in human eyes. But programmed by what? And why?" As the alien night deepened around them, Lisa realized that their discovery was bigger than just animal behavior. They had stumbled onto something that challenged everything humans thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. Dr. Kate Foster brushed dirt from the ancient bone fragment she had just uncovered. She was working in the deepest archaeological dig on New Terra, humanity's first colony world outside the solar system. The dig site was supposed to be routine, looking for early human settlement artifacts. Instead, Kate had found something that made no sense. The bone was clearly not human. It was too large, with strange ridges and hollow spaces that suggested a completely different body structure. But carbon dating showed it was nearly 3 million years old. long before humans had ever left Earth. Even stranger, the bone showed signs of deliberate burial, something that required intelligence and culture. Kate's team had been digging for 6 months, and each day brought more puzzling discoveries. They had found tools made from materials that didn't exist on New Terra naturally. They had uncovered artwork carved into stone that showed star patterns accurate to New Terra's night sky. Most confusing of all, they had found fossils of creatures that looked exactly like Earth's apex predators, but these fossils were millions of years older than they should be. Professor Foster called her assistant Danny Miller from across the excavation site. "You need to see what we found in Section 7. Kate walked over to where Danny was carefully cleaning a large fossil embedded in the rock face. As the dirt fell away, the shape became clear. It was a skull, but unlike anything in the fossil record. The bone structure was similar to human, but larger and more robust. The eye sockets were huge, suggesting eyes much bigger than modern humans possessed. "How old?" Kate asked. Danny checked his instruments. "Same as everything else down here. About 2.8 million years. But look at this." He pointed to markings on the skull's forehead. "These aren't natural bone formations, they're carved symbols." Kate leaned closer with her magnifying glass. The symbols were definitely artificial, cut into the bone with precision and purpose. They formed patterns that reminded her of star charts, but star charts for constellations she didn't recognize. That evening, Kate video called Dr. Sam Brooks, a geneticist who had been following her work. Sam specialized in evolutionary biology and had been trying to solve some of the same puzzles that Kate's dig was uncovering. "Sam, I need you to look at something," Kate said, holding up images of the carved skull. "We're finding evidence of an intelligent species that lived on New Terra millions of years ago. But here's the strange part. They coexisted with apex predators that are identical to species we're finding on dozens of other worlds today." Sam studied the images on his screen. "That's impossible, Kate. Evolution doesn't work that way. You can't have identical species developing on different worlds unless what? Unless they were placed there deliberately. But that would mean—" Sam paused, thinking through the implications. "Kate, send me samples of everything you found. Bone, tools, anything with organic material. I need to run genetic analysis." 2 weeks later, Sam called Kate with results that changed everything they thought they knew about human history. "Kate, the DNA we extracted from those bones is incredible. These beings, whoever they were, share genetic markers with modern humans, not recent common ancestors. I'm talking about direct genetic inheritance. It's like humans are their evolutionary descendants." Kate felt her heart racing. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that humans didn't evolve naturally on Earth. We're the result of genetic engineering by this ancient species. They guided our development over millions of years before disappearing from the fossil record." Kate looked around her dig, sight with new eyes. "Sam, we found evidence that these beings had a relationship with apex predators. The fossils show predators and these ancient humanoids living in the same areas, but there's no evidence of predation. No bite marks, no signs of hunting. It's like the predators served them somehow." Sam was quiet for a long moment. "Kate, I've been analyzing the genetic data from those predator reports Dr. Martinez sent out. The creatures that recognize humans across the galaxy all share similar genetic markers. Markers that match what I'm finding in your fossils." The implications hit Kate like a physical blow. They're related. The ancient species, modern humans, and all these apex predators across the galaxy. We're all connected somehow. Over the following months, Kate's team expanded their dig and made more discoveries. They found underground chambers filled with star maps showing the locations of hundreds of worlds. They discovered genetic laboratories with equipment far more advanced than anything humans had developed. Most importantly, they found records. The records were carved in stone and metal, preserved for millions of years. They told the story of a species that called themselves the Watchers. The Watchers had traveled across the galaxy, seeding worlds with life and guiding the evolution of both intelligent species and apex predators. According to these records, Kate told her team during a briefing, the Watchers saw themselves as gardeners of the galaxy. They would arrive on a world, establish ecosystems, and then guide the development of both predators and intelligent life. The predators were trained to recognize and protect the intelligent species. Danny pointed to one of the star maps. But what happened to them? Why did they disappear? Kate had found references to something the Watchers called the Great Dying. The records spoke of a catastrophe that forced them to retreat to their refuge worlds. Earth was mentioned as one of the last safe places where they continued their work with early human ancestors. They didn't disappear, Kate realized. They became us. The Watchers guided human evolution until they had transformed themselves into humanity. We're not their descendants. We're their continuation. Sam's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth. Kate, I've been running more genetic analysis based on your findings. Human eye structure carries specific markers that match the Watchers' genetic templates. The way human eyes reflect light, the patterns in our irises, even the way our pupils contract. It's all designed to trigger recognition responses in the apex predators they created. Kate walked outside her research station and looked up at the night sky. Somewhere among those stars were worlds where apex predators still carried the genetic memory of their ancient purpose. When they looked into human eyes, they weren't just seeing another species. They were seeing the return of their creators. The predators aren't recognizing us as survivors, Kate said softly into her communicator. They're recognizing us as the Watchers reborn. We're the inheritors of a galactic civilization that once protected and guided life across the stars. The discovery changed everything. Humanity wasn't just another intelligent species that had developed spaceflight. They were the genetic and cultural heirs to the galaxy's first great civilization, carrying within their DNA the keys to understanding their true purpose among the stars. Dr. Julie Grant stared at the massive stone structure rising from the barren landscape before her. The ruins were unlike anything humans had ever discovered. They were located in the galactic core, on a dead world that orbited a dying star. The expedition to reach this place had taken 2 years and cost more money than most planets made in a decade. Julie was a xenoarchaeologist, someone who studied the remains of alien civilizations. She had joined Kate Foster's team after the discoveries on New Terra revealed humanity's connection to the ancient Watchers. Now, using star maps found in the Watcher ruins, they had traveled to what appeared to be the original home world of the galaxy's first civilization. The energy readings are off the charts, said Tony Chen, the expedition's technical specialist. He was scanning the main pyramid with instruments that could detect power sources buried deep underground. Whatever built this place, it's still partially active after millions of years. The team included 12 specialists from different fields. Besides Julie and Tony, there was Maria Santos, a linguist who had learned to read Watcher symbols. There was Carl Johnson, a physicist who studied ancient technologies. Lisa Martinez had also joined them, bringing her expertise in predator behavior to help understand the complete picture. The ruins covered an area larger than most human cities. Pyramids, towers, and connecting bridges stretched across the landscape, in perfect geometric patterns. Everything was built from a black material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Walking through the complex felt like moving through the shadow of giants. "Look at this," Maria called from inside the central pyramid. She was standing before a wall covered in Watcher symbols, but these were more complex than anything they had found before. These aren't just records. They're star maps showing the entire galaxy. And look here. They show travel routes between thousands of worlds. Julie joined Maria at the wall. The symbols glowed faintly with their own light, making them easy to read even in the dark interior of the pyramid. As Maria translated, the scope of the Watcher civilization became clear. They weren't just on a few hundred worlds, Maria said. Her voice filled with amazement. They were everywhere. Every habitable planet, every moon that could support life. The entire galaxy was their garden. Carl had found something equally incredible in another chamber. Banks of crystalline computers still hummed with power, storing information that had been waiting millions of years for someone to access it. When he connected his translation device, the screens came to life with images and data. They called themselves the First, Carl announced to the team, not the Watchers. That was just one of their roles. They were the first intelligent species to evolve in this galaxy. They spent millions of years alone, exploring and learning, before they decided to create companions. The computers showed the history of the first in moving pictures and detailed records. They had started as a single species on a world that no longer existed. As they developed technology and learned to travel between stars, they realized they were completely alone in an empty galaxy. They could have filled the galaxy with copies of themselves, Carl continued, reading from the ancient files. Instead, they chose to create diversity. They seeded worlds with different kinds of life, guided evolution along countless different paths, and created thousands of intelligent species. Lisa found records that explained the predator connection. The first had realized that new intelligent species needed protection during their early development, so they created apex predators that were genetically programmed to recognize and serve the first. These predators were placed on worlds before intelligence evolved, becoming guardians for species that didn't even exist yet. It was a long-term plan spanning millions of years, Lisa explained to the team. The first would seed a world with life, place guardian predators in the ecosystem, then guide evolution until intelligence emerged. The predators would protect the new species until they were ready to join galactic civilization. But the records also revealed a tragedy. The computers showed images of a catastrophic event that the first called the Great Silence. Another galaxy had collided with theirs, disrupting star systems and destroying countless worlds. Worse than the physical destruction was something else. An alien force from the other galaxy that seemed to consume civilizations entirely. The first tried to fight it, Maria translated from a damaged section of the wall. But they realized they couldn't win, so they made a choice. Instead of letting themselves be destroyed, they scattered to their refuge worlds and began the transformation. Julie found the final pieces of the puzzle in the deepest chamber of the pyramid. Here, the first had recorded their last decision. Rather than face extinction, they had chosen to become something new. They had altered their own genetics, changing themselves into a form that could survive the coming darkness. They didn't die out, Julie announced to her team. They transformed themselves into us. Humans aren't the descendants of the first, we are the first, changed and adapted for survival. The computers showed the genetic templates that proved it. Human DNA contained markers that were millions of years old, inherited directly from the first. The specific patterns in human eyes, the brain structures that allowed for complex thought, even the way humans instinctively understood other species, all of it came from the first. Tony discovered the most amazing revelation in the pyramid's power core. The first had built a network of installations across the galaxy, all connected through quantum communication systems. Most had gone dormant when the first transformed themselves, but they were designed to reactivate when humans reached a certain level of development. They're waking up, Tony said, watching energy readings spike across his instruments. Human expansion into space is triggering these ancient installations. We're inheriting not just their genetics, but their entire infrastructure. As the team prepared to leave the ruins, Julie realized they had answered the original question about predator behavior, but discovered something much bigger. Humans weren't just another species that had developed intelligence. They were the continuation of the galaxy's first civilization, inheritors of technology and knowledge that spanned millions of years. The predators that recognized human eyes weren't remembering their creators, they were welcoming them home. Admiral Ray Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery, watching the green and blue planet rotating slowly below. This was humanity's newest colony world, a place they had named Haven. It was perfect for human settlement, with clean air, fresh water, and abundant plant life. But what made it truly special was what they had found in the northern continent. 6 months had passed since Julie Grant's team had discovered the truth about the first in the galactic core. The news had spread throughout human space, changing everything about how humanity saw itself. Now, on world after world, ancient installations were coming online, responding to human presence like they had been waiting for millions of years. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Kelly Wright from the communications station, "we're receiving a signal from the surface. The archaeology team says they've successfully activated the main facility." Ray nodded. Dr. Kate Foster and her expanded team had been working on Haven for 3 weeks, trying to understand how to operate the ancient technology they had found. The installation was massive, built into a mountain and extending deep underground. It was one of hundreds similar facilities being discovered across human space. On the planet's surface, Kate stood before a wall of crystal displays that had just come to life. The symbols and images flowing across the screens were beautiful, but more importantly, they were teaching her things that human science had never imagined. "It's incredible," Kate said into her communicator to the ship above. "The installation contains the complete genetic records of every species the first ever created, not just on this world, but on thousands of worlds across the galaxy." Her assistant, Bobby Turner, was working at another control station. "Dr. Foster, I think I've found something even more important. These computers contain star charts showing the locations of every world the first ever visited. But some of these worlds aren't in any of our databases. They're showing us planets we never knew existed." Kate walked over to Bobby's station and looked at the galactic map he had activated. Thousands of star systems were marked with different, colored symbols. Some were familiar, marking worlds that humans had already explored, but many others were completely unknown, scattered throughout regions of space that human ships had never visited. "Each color means something different," Bobby continued, pointing to the legend that had appeared on the screen. "Blue marks worlds with active guardian predators. Green shows worlds ready for colonization. Red indicates worlds where something went wrong, where the original plan failed." Kate felt a chill when she saw how many red markers there were. "What happened on the red worlds?" Before Bobby could answer, the main screen changed to show a new image. It was a planet, but something was wrong with it. The surface was covered in twisted, unnatural structures that looked like they were made of living metal. In the sky above the planet, massive ships moved in patterns that hurt to look at. "Warning," said a voice from the computers, speaking in perfect human language. "Corrupted worlds detected. The silence has awakened. Guardian protocols must be activated." Kate's blood ran cold. The silence was what the First had called the alien force that had caused the Great Silence millions of years ago. According to the records, it was something that consumed civilizations, turning them into twisted versions of themselves. "Admiral Clark," Kate said urgently into her communicator, "we need to contact Earth immediately. The ancient installations aren't just awakening to help us. They're warning us about something." Back on the Discovery, Ray immediately opened a priority channel to Earth. Within hours, emergency meetings were being held in every human government. The revelation that humanity was the continuation of the First had been difficult enough to accept. Now they were learning that their ancient enemy was still active in the galaxy. Dr. Pete Barnes, who had been working with the psychological effects of the discoveries, addressed the Earth Council via video link. "The installations are designed to prepare us for what's coming. Humanity isn't just inheriting the First knowledge and technology. We're inheriting their responsibility to protect the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, human colonists were learning to operate ancient technology that had been waiting for them. The installations contained weapons that could destroy entire fleets, shields that could protect whole star systems, and communication networks that could coordinate defenses across the galaxy. But the most important discovery came from an unexpected source. Emma White was a young colonist on the frontier world of New Frontier. She was only 19 years old and worked as a wildlife guide, helping new settlers understand the local ecosystem. She had no scientific training, but she had something else that proved crucial. Emma had been born on New Frontier and had grown up around the local apex predators. The great cats, as the colonists called them, were massive feline creatures that had always shown the typical recognition behavior toward humans. But Emma had developed a deeper connection with them than anyone had achieved before. One day, while Emma was leading a group of new colonists through the forest, they encountered a pack of great cats. Instead of the usual brief staring contest, the cats approached Emma directly and began making complex sounds she had never heard before. "They're trying to tell me something," Emma said to her surprised group. "Something important." The lead cat, A massive male with scars across his face walked up to Emma and gently placed his head against her chest. Suddenly, images flooded Emma's mind. She saw the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago, filled with life and light. She saw the coming of the silence, the darkness that consumed everything it touched. And she saw the plan that the first had put in place. "They're not just guardians," Emma said, her voice filled with wonder. "They're teachers. The first programmed them to awaken our genetic memory when humanity was ready." As Emma spoke, humans across the galaxy began reporting similar experiences. The apex predators were sharing their ancient knowledge, teaching humans how to use their inherited abilities and technology. The recognition in their eyes wasn't just memory, it was preparation. Admiral Ray Clark stood in the main conference room of the Discovery, surrounded by reports from across human space. Ancient weapons were coming online. Dormant shields were activating. And on world after world, apex predators were revealing themselves as humanity's teachers and allies. "We always wondered why we felt driven to explore the stars," Ray said to his officers. "Now we know. We're not just expanding into space, we're reclaiming our inheritance and preparing for the return of an ancient enemy." Emma's voice came through the communication system from the planet below. "Admiral, the great cats are showing me something else. The silence isn't just coming back, it's already here, moving through the outer regions of the galaxy. But this time, humanity is ready." As the ancient installations fully awakened and humanity began to understand its true purpose, the galaxy prepared for a war that had been postponed for millions of years. The first had sacrificed themselves to give their continuation, humanity, the tools and knowledge needed to succeed where they had failed. The apex predators that had once seemed mysterious now revealed themselves as humanity's greatest allies, carrying within their genetic memory the wisdom of the first and the knowledge of how to fight the silence. When they looked into human eyes, they weren't just recognizing their creators, they were welcoming home the galaxy's last hope.